Hi guys, it's Ginny here. I have been asked to kind of put together a little instructional or informational video about the new CDC requirements as we're moving into travel season for pets coming through Anchorage Vet Clinic. So I don't know how much or how little you guys will be individually involved with this process, but we just want to be sure that that you have answers to questions that you may have, that clients may have. And I guess the most important thing is that if you aren't certain, if a client asks you a question and you aren't certain, please just say you don't know and ask somebody else. So I'm going to try not to spend too much of your time here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this flow chart. I think John is going to make a copy of this and laminate it and put it in the exam rooms. For what it's worth, I have yet to have a client ask me to walk them through this process, but it is kind of a nice decision tree. So let's just kind of start with that. So at the top, dog or cat. If it's a cat, cats don't have any requirements to re-enter the United States. They don't need a health certificate. They just need a current rabies vaccination certificate, and that's not even for the United States. That's for Canada. So if it's a dog, the dog must be over 6 months old. If the dog is not over 6 months old, it cannot re-enter the United States until 6 months. So it could, for instance, leave the United States, cross over into Canada when it's like 5.5 months old and hang out in Canada for a couple of weeks, and then cross over the lower border. That is a possibility. Please ignore the squirrel chirping in the background. Sorry about that. If the dog is over 6 months old, then the first step is, does the dog have a 15-digit microchip implanted already? There are a couple clients that insist that a 9-digit microchip is ISO compliant, but we cannot find any indication that that is true. There appear to be a very few 9-digit chips that were dispensed in Europe, but I think that's a very unlikely scenario. So we're going to say that all dogs must have a 15-digit chip. And if you look on Google, pretty much everything says they all must contain 15 digits and the microchip number less than 15 digits, etc. So a 15-digit chip. So again, if the dog does not have a 15-digit microchip, if they only have a 9-digit chip, or if they have no chip at all, then the dog falls into kind of the bottom category, I guess, in terms of that 28-day waiting period, which I think is going to be the big problem for most clients, as well as the money, but we'll come back to that. So a microchip must be implanted, and then a new rabies vaccination, and then a USDA endorsed certificate. We'll come to that at the end. And then that 28-day waiting period before the USDA certificate can be endorsed and before the dog can re-enter the United States. So again, the dog could have a microchip, could have the rabies vaccination, go hang out in Canada for 28 days before it crosses back in, and that would be fine. I just don't think most people are planning to spend a month in Canada. The reasoning for this is that essentially, if you think about it, really, if somebody comes in with a rabies certificate for a black lab and there's no microchip, it really could be for any black lab. You know, somebody could have 10 black labs at home and they could come in with a rabies certificate, and they could be using that same certificate for every single dog in their household. How would we ever prove that that particular dog is the dog that had the vaccination? So the microchip is an effort to crack down on rabies vaccination verification in the United States. And the U.S. is way behind other countries in terms of that requirement. It's just that we're going to have a hard time convincing clients of that and meeting those requirements now and getting back up to speed. So again, if there's no microchip, they have to get a chip. They have to have a new rabies vaccine after the chip. They have to have the 28-day waiting period and then get that endorsed certificate. And we'll come down to this yellow box here at the bottom as well. If the dog does have a 15-digit microchip, then we need to get into whether or not the dog's rabies vaccination is current and has the microchip number documented on it and has the following data points on the rabies certificate. And again, I'm going to go through a little bit of these in greater detail. It needs to have the name and address of the owner, the dog's breed, sex, date of birth, color, and markings, We're not great about getting color documented in our chart, so we need to change that. The ISO compatible microchip number, the vaccine product name and manufacturer name, and we'll come to that too, a lot number, and the product expiration date. This is a real problem, again, for a lot of rabies certificates coming from other clinics. Our clinic does it, but to be honest, there was a period of time when we did not list the product name. We only list the manufacturer, Zoetis. And that's true on a lot of other certificates as well from other clinics. The date of the vaccine, the date the vaccine expires, the date the dog is next due to get a vaccine, and then the name, license number, address, phone number, email, some sort of contact information, and signature of the veterinarian who administered the vaccine. If that is not complete, and we can't get that information from whoever gave the certificate, then once again we're back into this orange box. Not the chip, but they need a new vaccination, and then the certificate, the 28-day waiting period, and then the USDA certificate. If all of this is on the latest rabies vaccine, then we get into this kind of tricky period about if the dog's current rabies is a 1 year or a 3 year duration. If it's a 1 year duration, then kind of we're good to go. So that's sort of the fast lane here. If, however, it's a 3 year duration, and this is a little bit confusing, so I apologize if I don't say this exactly comprehensively. If it's a 3 year vaccine, then you have to see if the previous rabies expired by even 1 day before the next rabies booster was given. So the vaccine before the 3 year vaccine, let's say that was given on September 13th of 2022, and it's a 3 year vaccine. If that dog's previous vaccine was given December 10th of 2022, and there was a 3 day lapse, then that is considered a lapsed vaccine. So it expired before the next rabies booster was given. And so then that puts them into the bad news category. No lapse is permitted. The most recent is now considered a 1 year, which means that now that vaccine is expired. If, however, the vaccine was given in September of 2023 and it expired, then it becomes a 1 year, and we're still before September of 2023. So again, looking at your most recent rabies certificate, was the vaccine given less than 1 year ago? Yes. So that moves them back into the thank heavens we are in that category. If, however, it's no, and there was no lapse between the vaccine by even 1 day, and then you have to see, does it contain all of that information? Then yes. And if no, then you go back through back to this do not pass go, do not collect $200 for those of you who play Monopoly. So, and then that gets us into this yellow box, which is the USDA certification form. This form must be completed by the veterinarian or clinic who administered the vaccine, and then endorsed by the USDA. And there's a little asterisk down here. Footnote, it's an online form filed by the vet who gave the vaccine by an online system called AVCUC. We are filing those. Dave and Skylar are filing those, and myself. This must be done prior to leaving the U.S., except during this transition period. There is a 1 year transition period. So if somebody calls and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know I needed this, and they're calling from Manitoba or somewhere, if we gave the vaccine, we can file it remotely. If the veterinarian clinic is unable or unwilling to file that form, then the dog might conceivably need another vaccination in the 28-day waiting period, depending on whether documents are in order or not. The dog may be eligible for a USDA endorsed Canada export health certificate instead of this certification of US issued rabies vaccine, which I will now call a CUSIRV, CUSIRV, just to keep from saying that over and over again. But if it's in any way incomplete, it needs that 28-day waiting period again. So it needs to start over. Also, please note that the USDA requires 72 hours of processing time. They are closed weekends and holidays. So 28-day waiting period, and then the USDA has to approve it, and then we have to email it to the owner. Also, we are assuming that this is all by vehicle travel. If any of the journey is by airline travel, the airline has their own requirements and timelines. So the dog might need this CUSIRV, but might also need a domestic travel certificate, because a lot of people will fly down and drive back, or drive down and fly back. That's a separate category. So you can see this is going to get kind of expensive, especially for multi-pet families. But unfortunately, we've tried to find every way around it, and this is the only way it seems to be approved at this time. Okay, so back over here a little bit. Again, the 15-digit microchip. People sometimes say, that they're only hopping across the border to go for a fishing trip, or to go drive over up into Whitehorse, or go camping. This is from the CDC FAC page. I travel frequently to Canada, Mexico. This applies to all dogs, including dogs that leave the country for short trips, such as to visit family or friends or receive veterinary care. So they are, even if they're just hopping across the border briefly, they're going to need this documentation. For dogs that did not meet the entry requirements or do not have accurate or valid forms, they are denied entry to the U.S. and returned to the country of departure. This does not mean they will be returned to the United States. It means they will be returned to Canada and be stuck in Canada until they get all this sorted out. This does apply to all dogs, including service dogs. There are a variety of documents that were put out by the CDC and the USDA as regards this matter, and so I've kind of highlighted a few of the more contentious assertions here, I think. So in particular, this is for filling out the CUSIRV form. Rabies vaccines administered prior to microchip implantation date are invalid. We went over that already, but here it is in black and white and red. Similarly, from the CUSIRV instructions form, the initial vaccine administered after microchip implantation is only valid for 1 year. So even if the dog is 12 years old and it's had vaccines all of its life, when it gets a microchip, the very first vaccine it gets will only be valid for 1 year. Also, about this lapse in vaccine. So if a dog's vaccination expires before it gets its booster, then it is considered an initial vaccine again. So 28 days after the booster, if the dog's previous rabies vaccine had expired prior to receiving the booster. This is the online USDA AVCUC form, the page of the form that talks about that requires the rabies vaccine information. So you can see for yourself that all of these data fields are required. And if they are not filled out for the past 3 years of the dog's vaccination history, then this will not be approved. I've already had a couple of these be bounced back to me by the USDA. So you can see the product name. So this would be Vanguard, and the manufacturer is Zoetis. So you can't put Zoetis. The lot number, the product expiration date. Again, this is not the date that the vaccine expires in the dog. This is the date the vaccine expires in the refrigerator. This field is lacking on a large number of rabies certificates that we get from other clinics. And clinics sometimes don't have a way to fix this with their current software. Southside Animal Hospital is currently having that problem. There are, frankly, ways around it, but I think some clinics are just can't be bothered to sort this out. Fortunately, our clinic does have this data field in its software. The date the vaccine was given to the dog and the date the next vaccination is due for the dog. So you can see this is all, these fields must be completed or they won't be eligible. And then I just wanted to show you a couple of certificates that are lacking data. So for instance, this is from Chester Valley. So Chester Valley has all of the dog's information, but no chip. So there's no chip number here. Just for example's sake, we'll look back and see it's got the owner's name. It has the owner's address. That's great. Phone number, email address, great. And so down here, we've got the Zoetis, but no product name. So it doesn't say Zoetis Vanguard or Zoetis Defensor, it just says Zoetis. So this is where it should say Defensor or Vanguard. So that's another reason this would be rejected. It does have the date it was given and the date that it was due, and then the serial number is here, and presumably this is the lot expiration date. So the rest of the data fields are complete, but it's lacking the rabies vaccination manufacturer, or excuse me, the rabies vaccination name, and also the dog's microchip number. This is one from Bethel, and this has kind of, not surprisingly, all sorts of issues. First of all, it's a P.O. box. That's not allowed. And there's not even any room. If you look at this, there's not even any room for a microchip number. The new NASPHV form number 51 does have a box up here for the microchip number, but when Dr. Kleka filled this out, it was not available. Also, here's VAN for Vanguard, but Zoetis. So here the manufacturer is not represented. The vaccine, the serial number is here, but the vaccine expiration, the lot expiration date is not represented. To be honest, there's probably additional failures on this certificate, but just for the sake of example, we'll go with that. And this one was one from Polar Pets that uses Shepherd. So this is the same format that our rabies certificate has. And what we did at Anchorage Vet Clinic is we put Vanguard right into here, into the name. So it would say Zoetis and rabies vaccination canine 1 year Vanguard. But Polar Pets hasn't yet done that. So this is lacking that information. But it has all of the rest. So it has the date the dog is vaccinated, the date the dog's vaccine expires, the date the lot expires, the lot number and serial number, and then the owner's name and contact information, and the dog's microchip number. So again, this just gets very, very complicated. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. This is a copy of what a Canada Health Certificate is going to look like. It's the 7001 form. Some of you may remember this is an old-fashioned kind of travel certificate that we have, but it does require USDA endorsement. So we can't just fill this out and hand it to the owner. This has to be submitted, and then the USDA has to endorse it and return it. At one point, we thought it would be possible to list multiple pets on one certificate, but the current information from the CDC and USDA suggests that is not possible. So these are all one certificate per pet. Again, you can imagine the fees on this are going to add up pretty quickly, and people are going to be pretty unhappy. Each certificate is about $200 at this time. We may or may not change that. I don't know. They are a lot of work. They're much, much more work than a standard health and travel certificate, but people who come in with 3 and 4 dogs that are driving down the Alcan are going to be socked with, $800 worth of fees. I will mention also, somebody was asking if a little bit off topic, if a current exam is necessary, which is to say, do we need to see the dog again? And there are no statements on the CUSIRV that indicate the dog has recently been seen. It's just that when we fill out the CUSIRV, we have to list the examination date as the last date that the dog was seen. So again, I hope that's helpful for you guys and not terribly confusing. Let me know if you have any questions about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.